and welcome to the Heat Check Podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Heat Podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I'm joined, as always, on the other line by Anthony Chang, our Heat beat writer here at the Miami Herald, back in Miami, in his stopped at La Carreta on the way back from the airport, literally drinking it as we record today. That's how you know he's a true Miamian. First thing you do when you get off the plane is go to Aventanita.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to sponsor our podcast,
seriously,
feel free.
Yeah.
Great café con leche. How are you, David?
That's what I get there too, actually. That's what I always get when I go to La Carreta.
Can't go wrong with that.
Yeah. I'm doing pretty well. Enjoying, this is kind of like one of my favorite weeks of the year with all the college basketball going on. We're recording at 7:30. Hopefully going to wrap up in time to watch some good games in Maui. 4 top 10 teams.
How about Hard Knocks
tonight?
Watching the Hard Knocks?
Hard Knocks, I haven't been watching. I've never really been a Hard Knocks guy, honestly. But maybe I should check it out. I'm a little more interested with the in-season thing than I am with the preseason stuff. So maybe I'll check it out. Seems like that's kind of interesting to me how it's going to work.
The first episode is tonight. Well,
okay.
People listening will be over, but
yeah.
Tonight, so.
Gotcha. All right. We're back. The Heat are still playing well. Finally, the winning streak ended. But bounced back 2 nights later with another win in Chicago to split that 2-game set up there. They have won 8 of their last 9, 9-5 now overall. We'll start kind of. We have a couple topics we want to handle, and we definitely want to talk about Jaime Jaquez, who's been one of the stories of the season, certainly for this team. We want to talk Tyler Herro, as his return is presumably getting a little bit closer. But first of all, you were obviously up there in Chicago. They lose once, but then bounce back with a blowout win. One of their probably their first blowout win of the year, right? First double-digit win of the season.
Yeah.
What do you like that you saw from them on Monday night?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was just a very Heat-like weekend. So they go to Chicago, they lose on Saturday, bad fourth quarter, offense was bad. Lose to not a good. The Bulls aren't.
No, not a good team. Probably going to trade Zach LaVine. They're reeling.
That's just. I mean, you talk to people up there, it's like not a fun situation.
Yeah.
And the next day they're at practice. Eric Spoelstra's talking about all the teaching points. Too many turnovers late. Didn't get into the offense quick enough. Waited too late in the shot clock to kind of get run their actions. Sloppy. Just not intentional. They only had 5 makes at the rim. They just weren't even getting into the rim. They didn't. Then the following morning, they had a shoot-around at the United Center, so practice and shoot-around, and they come out that night and basically correct all of their issues, everything that went wrong, just so Heat-like. And they have their second-best offensive performance of the season in terms of offensive rating. They generate a bunch more shots with their rim. They shoot 48% on threes. Just a great offensive game. Well-rounded. The bench was a lot better than 3 nights before. They do this. That's what they do. That's what Eric Spoelstra teams do. Led teams do. They use those losses as lessons. And you kind of saw it just in this 2-game set in Chicago, where they corrected all their issues. So it was, again, Chicago's not a great team, but for them to get a double-digit win, to really dominate that game, they won pretty much every category. Chicago never led in that game.
Yeah.
They just dominated it. It's encouraging to do that on the road. That's the sign of a good team.
Yeah, pretty much played basically like everyone played well, right? It was one of those kind of games where you look up and down the box score and the stat sheet. It's like there's nothing to nitpick. Jimmy only had 16, but didn't need it, right? So that's kind of ideal too. Quarter. Yeah, exactly. Duncan Robinson continues to play really well and was hitting his threes. Obviously, that changes everything for this team. Jaime Jaquez, who we're going to talk about, was spectacular. Maybe his best game yet as a pro. It's
up there.
Yeah,
up there.
When the shot, obviously he hit 3 threes, so that kind of changes things for him. A plus 24 to lead the team. So a really good performance from him. They're not going to get that every night, right? They're not going to get like I said, they're not going to get nights that often where no one plays poorly essentially on the entire roster. They're not going to get a lot of nights where no one plays poorly on the entire roster, but they've been closer to what we saw last night than they've been like that's it's not too far off from what we've seen from them over the last, I guess, 3 weeks now since they kind of kicked off this winning streak.
Yeah. I think one of the most encouraging things to me is the question with this team is always the offense. Like,
Yeah.
this team has always seemed to have a ceiling because their offense just isn't above average. But for the last few weeks, it's been good. I mean, for the season, their half-court offense is 14th, which again doesn't sound great. But for the Heat, that is like almost all. That's basically the recipe they had the PJ Tucker year when they were the number 1 seed. Again, I'm not saying they're going to be the number 1 seed, but if they have a top 7, top 8 defense and a top 15 offense, all of a sudden you're probably there in that getting to 50 wins around there, and you're fighting for that 3, 4, 3, one of the top 4 seeds in the East at least, I would say.
Yeah.
So the offense has been trending in a positive direction, which is good to see. The schedule, while they have been on the road a lot, and one thing Monday's win did do is it guaranteed the Heat will finish this 17-game stretch, which includes the 12 road games in the first 17 games. It guarantees they'll come out of that with a winning record because they already have 9 wins. The worst they could be is 9-8, which at the beginning of the season, if you would have said they'd be 9-8 after those 17 games, I mean, you take
especially
that, right?
Especially when you started 1-5 or 1-4 or whatever it was.
Yeah. But the opponents have not been great. I think they have one winning against a winning team during this entire stretch, and that was the Lakers, who are now barely above 500. Everyone else has either been really, really bad or just below 500 or 500. So they haven't like beaten a bunch of great teams, but can't really nitpick, right? Like there's so much parity in the NBA right now that there aren't that many great teams.
Yeah.
And the Heat, I mean, when they get out of this, they're gonna have a bunch of home games. So that's a good thing for them. So if they can just win, if they can come out of this trip even 2-3, you're talking about being 10-7 after these 17 games. I mean, that's really a successful stretch. So there's really not many bad things to say about the Heat right now, other than continue to monitor the offense. And I want to see now the schedule gets a little tougher. They're going to face, when they go home, Indiana twice, which Indiana's playing really well, Milwaukee. Like, it's going to get a little tougher. We'll see how they fare.
Yeah, I mean, like they've only beaten one team with a winning record in this stretch, but they've only played 4 teams with a winning record all year. And three of them are on the road, and 2 of them are close losses on the road. They got blown out at Minnesota, who turns out to be like really, really good.
Really good. Yeah.
But also, I think that was the game Jimmy sat out, if I remember correctly. Also, so it was like,
back to back. Yeah.
You know, it's not like they've gotten blown out every time they play a good team and blow out every bad team they play. It's, you know, they've been competitive in every game pretty much, except for that Wolves game. Every game they played with a good team has been competitive, and now they're not, like we said, they only have one double-digit win so far this year, so it's not like they're blowing out all the bad teams they're playing, but they're taking care of business against all these bad teams, that's the difference, as you kind of mentioned. You know, there's a lot of things that are the difference between 46 wins and 50 wins. One of them is being like you said, for them, it's probably like top 15 offense, but the other thing is just don't screw up those games against the Hornets and the Wizards, and they did that a lot last year, obviously. And this year, you know, they've only got, again, like we said, only one win against a team with a winning record, but only 2 losses to teams with a losing record so far. So they're doing exactly what they had to do early on in the stretch. And we were worried, I think, just because of what we saw last year and the fact that this team on paper looked worse than it was last year, that it was going to be shaky to start. And instead, they look much closer to the team they were 2 years ago and the team they were in the playoffs last year. And you kind of get the feeling that, like, that's the real Heat, and what we saw for basically the first half of last season is some kind of weird outlier. Yeah,
and, you know, it still remains to be seen how good this defense can be. Right now, they're 10th overall in defensive rating. 2 years ago, when they were the number 1 seed at a top 5, I think they were 5th or 4th. They were a top 5 defense. And that makes a difference, right? So if they can get into that top 5, I don't know if they have the personnel to do that this year. That, you know, 2 years ago it was a younger Kyle Lowry, it was PJ Tucker. We just had more guys, you know, that made up a top 5 defense. I don't know if they're playing the lineups to do that, but that's their goal, obviously. If they can get a top 5, if they can have a top 5 defense and a top 15 offense, you're competing for a top spot in the East.
Yeah.
And it's still early. Sample sizes are small. You said they haven't played great teams yet. They haven't played many great teams yet. So we'll see where they settle in. But the offense trending up is a positive sign because, again, we know the defense is probably going to be top 10. Whether it's 9, 5, 7, like, we'll see. But the offense not to be 25th, 26th, like it was all last season, that's huge. And this is without Tyler Herro, which we'll get to later on.
Right.
This is without their quote-unquote top scorer, most gifted scorer, natural scorer, whatever you want to call it. He hasn't been there. And they are, I think, now 5-1 since he's been out. Again, that would be many good teams, but still 5-1 and playing. I think your two best offensive performances of the season have been during this stretch. So again, typical Heat, just finding a way to just win games.
Yeah, I mean, again, like when we talk about like where teams rank, ultimately it doesn't matter that much. But generally, to like be a contender, a real contender, you've got to be either super elite in one aspect and then like middle of the pack in the other. That's been the Heat recipe a lot lately, or like top 10 in both. And the thing when you're 14th, pretty close to the top 10, like a couple of good shooting nights, and all of a sudden you're like, they're considering how ugly it was to start the year too. And as you mentioned, the fact that Tyler Herro hasn't been playing and Duncan seems to just kind of be rounding into form with his 3-point shot lately. And Jimmy Butler still hasn't been like MVP level Jimmy Butler like he was last year. Like this team has certain, like definitely has the room to grow to become a top 10 offensive team. Obviously everything else has to keep clicking, right? Like Jaime Jaquez has to keep playing like this. Bam has to keep playing like this. Like there's a lot of things that are maybe exceeding expectations that we didn't expect, that are contributing to where they kind of rank as an offense right now. But you know, there's still room for growth in a way that is like conceivable. It's not just like, oh, they can shoot better from three, but they don't have any good 3-point shooters. Like there are real, tangible, obvious ways for them to play even better on offense.
Yeah. And one encouraging thing, like you look deeper into the offense, 8th best 3-point percentage as a team. Last year they were the worst, second worst all season. Like that makes a difference. We said that. Like last year, I kept writing the difference between them being the worst offense and them being where they were the year before, like 15th, was them just hitting 2 more or 3 more threes a game. And so far they've been doing that. 8th best 3-point percentage at 37.6%, and that's good. If they could do that, they don't shoot a ton of threes, but if they can make a high percentage of them, their offense isn't going to be bottom 5 like it was last year. It's just not. You're not going to have a bottom 5 offense or your top 10 in 3-point percentage in today's NBA. So that's a big one as well.
All right, where do you want to go next? Do you want to go Tyler Herro first or Jaime Jaquez? Let's go Tyler, just because I think it works like with what we're talking about. Yeah. What's the latest there? I guess we'll start with what are maybe like reasonable expectations for when he could be back out on the floor, and then we'll talk obviously about what happens once he's back out there.
Yeah. So the Heat said on Monday that he's out of the walking boot, so that's a good sign. I've heard that the rehab is going very well. I don't expect him back on this trip. I know he's going to be reevaluated now, like either tomorrow or Thursday, one of these at some point this week. But once he's reevaluated and if he's cleared, then he has to start like playing basketball again and like testing the ankle. This trip ends on Saturday. So I've always thought, and I think this is going to prove to be true, this next homestand that begins in a week on Tuesday, against the Bucks is probably a more realistic expectation. I don't know if it'll be the start of the homestand. We'll see. I guess it depends on how his ankle feels when he starts playing again. But that homestand is basically almost a week long. I think at some point during that homestand or maybe right after it.
Yeah, they go on the road for one game and then it's another long homestand.
Yeah.
So
yeah, at some point during that stretch, for sure, I would expect Tyler Herro back. I think from what I hear, everything is going very well in the rehab and he's progressing well.
So we're obviously the big question now, and it's the narrative that popped up in the playoffs last year is this team better without Tyler Herro? I think both of us don't necessarily agree with that. I think most people see the flaw in that logic, and especially as we mentioned, it's not like this team is beating great teams. Like, sure, maybe this team's actually better against like the bad teams when Tyler Herro's not out there, and like you have just kind of like maybe a higher floor in some ways, but when they get, if he could be back for that Milwaukee game, right? That's really kind of like the next real major test for this team. Philly on Christmas will be a big one. Like those are the kind of games I think when you're going to need Tyler Herro. Where do you think he fits in once he gets back? Is he right back into the starting lineup? Are they going to maybe do like a little bit what they did with Kyle Lowry last year, where maybe they secretly wanted to bring him off the bench anyway, and they kind of use the injury as an excuse? Where do you see this going once he's back on the court?
I don't see him not starting, and I get what people. First of all, I think it's ridiculous that people say the team is better without him. And I guess the argument to that is like, oh, Jimmy's usage goes up. We're playing more through Jimmy and Bam. That's a good thing. To me, maybe they do have stuff to work out with Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler out there together. Maybe there is stuff to work out to make it work. But I think they'll figure it out. Like Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in the NBA, if not the best coach in the NBA. Like he always take talent, and Tyler Herro is very talented. Again, he's probably the best scorer on this team. You need someone to create offense for himself off the dribble. Tyler Herro can do that. Like he's really good at that. He's a 3-level scorer now, finishes around the rim, good mid-range shooter, really good 3-point shooter, spot up off the dribble. Like he does it all. So I refuse to believe this team is better without him. The question is like, do you keep him in the starting lineup? I mean, I don't see that. I don't see his role changing when he returns. Some of this personality management, like Tyler Herro's been very adamant about wanting to start. He's a 23-year-old player on a huge contract.
Former most improved, or former,
Sixth man of the year.
Sixth man of the year.
One of the top young scorers in the league. He deserves to start. He's the third best player on the team. I think there's a conversation maybe to be had of like, do you find a way to keep Duncan in the starting lineup because he complements Bam and Jimmy so well? So do you take Kyle out of the starting lineup and bring him off the bench? I mean, Kyle's minutes have, even with Tyler out, haven't been that high. They've been kind of playing without a point guard a lot of the time, especially down the stretch. Maybe that's a possibility. Or maybe, you just say, Duncan goes back to the bench. He was playing well off the bench even before Tyler went out. You see how it works out. The one thing I've noticed is Spo has been trying to thread the needle where when Tyler Herro was out there, yes, he was starting games, but he was the first sub out of the game.
Yeah.
Because then he would leave.
Yeah, you kind of turn him into the sixth man also. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's another way you could do about it, and that's what he was doing, where he leaves the game after 5 minutes, sits for 2 minutes, and then enters with like 4 minutes left in the first quarter with the bench lineup, and he leads those bench lineups for most of the time. So there's a way to give him what he wants starting and what he deserves, but also letting him kind of lead those bench lineups like he is the sixth man. So I think there are different possibilities. There are different ways you can go about it, but the bottom line is I would not expect, just my thought process, I would not expect Tyler Herro to go back to a bench role. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, to me, the one kind of like X factor or like wrench in this whole thing is like Duncan is so hot right now, and we know how streaky he can be. I don't want to mess with it at all. That's the one concern I have there. It's not as much about Tyler. It's about, whatever that is. Some guys are better in the starting lineup, right? Some guys are good when they get a touch on the first. Like some guys need to touch the ball once before they shoot. Like you hear about all those kind of, I don't even want to say superstitions, but kind of like habits or routines, I guess is probably the better word. And for right now, Duncan is, in some ways, the biggest reason this team is exceeding expectations, right, is the fact that he had been kind of like a negative player for a lot of the last 2 years, and there's huge concern about what they were going to do to replace Strus and Vincent and their 3-point shooting, and Duncan is just obviously shooting it really. He's up over 43% now from 3-point range, and obviously doing other things well. Like to me, that's the one thing there is you gotta. I don't want to mess with whatever is working right now for him. Obviously, like you said, Tyler's not going to be back for at least another, I don't know,
another week,
right? At least a week. So things are going to be a lot different. Things change fast in the NBA. Jimmy will be.
They could lose the next 3
games. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
But to me, that's the one concern I have is how do you keep Duncan playing the way he is for as long as possible?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And he's proven it, just not even during this stretch. 2 of the last 3 years, he was a full-time starter, and he was all the metrics were better with him on the court. The offense was just better with the space he provides. And when he's playing at this level and shooting at this level, I mean, he's the perfect complement to Bam and Jimmy. He attracts so much. He's attracts so much gravity. You know, with when he's running off screens, off the handoffs. Now he makes defenses pay. You know, by closing out too hard, he'll attack the closeout and get to the paint and play make for others or finish at the rim. Like there's so many different layers to his offensive game now. Yeah, Duncan is. I think we both knew that Duncan was going to be important to this team before the season just because they needed the shooting. But with his improvement, he is. I mean, is he the fourth best player on the team now? I mean, it's like before we thought it was Caleb. Now it's like, is it Caleb? Is it Jaime Jaquez? Is it Duncan? I mean, when Duncan's playing at this level again, he's not going to shoot 50% for the season or like 40-something% for the season. Probably not, but just the confidence he's playing with and the different things he's able to do now off the dribble, he is a must-play guy now. I mean, he can't be out of the rotation. You can't afford him to be out of the rotation because he's one of your top offensive weapons.
But I think for the most part, I agree with you. Like Tyler, to me, what's going to matter is what he's going to be able to do. He's going to like steal wins for you in games you shouldn't win, right? Otherwise, and that's the thing that he's going to add to this team when he gets back. And yeah, you're probably right. He ends up in the starting lineup. Certainly at some point, like who knows, maybe he comes off the bench his first couple games just because of like minutes, load management kind of stuff. Right. But there's a reason he hasn't come out of the starting lineup at any point in the last two years, right? Has he come off the bench once since they put him in the starting lineup? Maybe in an injury situation or something, but
and I think like yes, the offense is playing well right now. But without Tyler Herro, there is a clear ceiling to this offense.
Yeah.
If you're not hitting threes at the rate you were
their
last
offense,
night,
and they scored 118 points. Like, you
right.
look around the league, and teams are scoring 130 plus. And obviously, a lot of that is pace and stuff, and the Heat just don't play super fast. But, there's like levels to this, and the Heat are a cut below the top teams in the league. Top offense in the league.
Tyler raises your offensive ceiling, and nobody can argue that. Nobody can. I just and I don't get that. Like, I get the notion that someone would say, "Oh, but like he can still play big minutes. It's about closing the game. It doesn't matter who starts." And I understand that, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But again, I think personality management matters, and you can't lose Tyler Herro. Like Eric Spoelstra has called this a big three: with Bam, Jimmy, and Tyler. You need to make it work with the three of them together. They're your three best players. You can't like shy away from playing them together. That doesn't make sense. Now, do you stagger lineups? Sure. I mean, he's been doing that now, even with Tyler out. Bam has been leading one bench lineup with Duncan, and Jimmy has kind of been tethered to Kevin Love, and they've been leading those bench lineups. So you stagger lineups always, and he'll do that again with Tyler Herro when he returns.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is like it's the regular season, right? Like the most important thing this team can do for the next how many months do we have until the playoffs start?
5 months.
5 months. Is figure out how to like get those three guys to be able to play really well together, because that's the ultimate ceiling of this team is like if they have a real big three, and to have a big three, like big three means you got the three guys on the floor together and they can go toe to toe with anyone, right?
They work, they complement each other and they work together. Yeah. That's a great point. Like that's what this regular season's for. Spo has said it.
Yeah.
You need to find a way to make it work. The process was ongoing when Tyler Herro was playing. There were some issues in the fourth quarter. But again, like you said, the regular season is long, and that's the point of this. Like, you need to find a way to have your three best players work together and produce positive results.
Mm-hmm. And the way the East is shaking up, we knew the East was going to be kind of weak, I think, this year. Like, I know the Magic are right there with the Heat and kind of that top echelon right now, but it sort of seems like it's going to be a 4-team. Like, it seems like there's a top tier that's 4 teams with obviously the Celtics, the Bucks, the Sixers, who've been
4 teams as always. Yeah.
And the Heat, it's the same guys as every year. And like maybe the Magic will be this year's Cavs or the Knicks from a couple years ago. Like there's always one team that's usually a young team that's trying really hard, that plays above their heads a little bit. And
Pacers
can stay in there. Yeah, Pacers are playing well right now. But like the Heat should be able to certainly get a top 5 seed, kind of no matter, unless like injuries, whatever, totally derails this. The way that they're beating the bad teams they're playing, again, like that's a huge part of this. There's a lot of bad teams, as we just kind of mentioned. Like there's like 40 easy wins on the schedule in some ways because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you would have done it last year, they would have not been the play-in. So
yeah,
makes a big difference.
Okay, let's wrap up with some Jaime Jaquez talk. Everyone's favorite Heat topic. Let's go back to Monday again. Like I said, one of his best games, hitting threes, which is obviously like, kind of skews it a little bit if that's not the player he is. It makes him look a little bit better. But he's been awesome, obviously, in every situation this year, right? What has impressed you most about him? As someone who I think, it's not like you don't watch a lot of college basketball. You weren't living the Jaime Jaquez experience for the last 4 years. What's been your biggest takeaway from what you've seen through 15 games about?
One of the things I knew about Jaime Jaquez coming in was that he looked like you. I remember you telling me that your friend said that he resembled you on the basketball court.
A little taller.
With the hair, with the hair and all that. But I think what's impressed me most is that he's earned the trust of Erik Spoelstra so quickly. Like, this doesn't happen all the time. I think we saw a little bit of Tyler Herro, but for a rookie, this quickly to be like, basically play almost the entire fourth quarter every game. He's playing 30+ minutes every game off the bench. You're running offense through him. He's guarding DeMar DeRozan, LeBron James. Who else did he guard on the trip? There was another player he guarded. Whatever. He guards like the top guys. He's trusted to be the primary defender, like the top scorers of the other team, and he's holding his own against them. He's a good defender, like a really good defender.
Yeah.
He could score in the post. He has so many moves he can go
big,
to.
like it's kind of like the Strus thing, right? It's like he's big, like he's strong, he's sturdy. He's an older guy, obviously. Like you look at a lot of these 19-year-olds who come to the league and they're twigs. He's built like a adult human being. Like that goes a long way.
I was talking to I won't name him, but a national reporter yesterday in Chicago, and we were watching like the final few minutes of the game, and he's like, Jaime Jaquez, like, look at him against Patrick Williams. Patrick Williams is like in his third or fourth season in the NBA. Jaime's a rookie, and Jaime looks like so ahead of him in every aspect.
Mm-hmm.
He has so many moves he could turn to. He has good footwork. He's making his threes. Like, that raises the ceiling so much. He's a good defender. He's a good passer. Just smart. Doesn't make many mistakes. So I think the thing that's impressed me most is that he's earned the trust of Erik Spoelstra.
Yeah,
and he has been fourth. He's in the running for fourth best player so far this season on the team, which I didn't think he was going to have a role to start this season. I thought it was going to take a little bit. I didn't know if he could hold up on defense. I didn't think he would be able to shoot, at a decent enough rate to be on the floor, which is almost essential play on this team because of Bam.
He needed one of those two things, right? He needed to either be a better defender than we thought or a better shooter than we thought, and he's been both so far.
Yeah, and like the shot wasn't there at the beginning of the season. He wasn't shooting the ball well, but lately he's been shooting it really well, especially from the corners. He doesn't really shoot a lot above the break threes, but from the corners,
doesn't have to.
As a spacer,
right?
he's been really. I'm looking right now. He's 8 of 24 for the season from the corners, but lately, it's been a lot better. If I would say it was probably close to 40%. In that win against Chicago on Monday, he was 3 of 4 from this corner threes.
Yeah.
So that's a big shot for him. But he's just everything. Like, it's so rare to see a rookie this quickly have this type of impact on a Heat team, and he's done that.
You asked me when we were texting before about what we were going to talk about. You wanted to come up with some player comps for Jaime Jaquez, which I was kind of struggling with it, but I do want to give you just a couple because one of my favorite things on the internet is NBADraft.net player comps, which famously Deshaun Stevenson, his player comp was Michael Jordan. So iconic NBA internet stuff. For NBADraft.net, Jaime Jaquez player comp was Jorge Garbajosa. Don't know if you remember Jorge Garbajosa. A star of one of the great basketball YouTube videos of all time. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I think he was playing for Real Madrid. I'll send it to you after. He's playing for Real Madrid, and it was like this crazy ending, and the announcer is going crazy, yelling Garbajosa after he hit like a clutch three. 24/7 also does player comps. Obviously, this is from when they're coming out of high school. A guy named Tres Tinkle, who I've literally never heard of, apparently played for Oregon State. Now plays for a team in Spain, but from his Wikipedia page.
What was he rated as a high school prospect? How many stars?
Jaime? He was 4-star, the number 100 player in the country.
Okay, wow.
But Tres Tinkle, this fellow I've never heard of, from Missoula, Montana, played at a high school called Hellgate High School, which is one of the coolest high school names I've ever heard. So,
intimidating.
There you go. Now we've got the brain churning with Jorge Garbajosa and Tres Tinkle. I think he's gonna have a better career than either of those two guys.
My player comparison for him is Luka. No, I'm kidding. I mean, it's a little bit the way the pace.
Tres Tinkle, 3-time first team All Pac-12, so not a bad player. Never played in the NBA, but
put some respect on his name.
Yeah,
that's fair. The ones I've heard the most, and I agree with, Gordon Hayward is one of
the Gordon Hayward. It's a little bit of a white guy to
but the way they play,
white guy. Yeah, but it is. Yep.
Jaime is kind of unique in today's NBA with the way he plays.
Yeah, I was struggling to come up with some comps for him.
I mean, honestly, and I'm not saying he's gonna be as good as this guy, but he plays like him, Jimmy. Like,
right. That was the other Mexican Jimmy, right? That was like what Heat fans were saying when he got drafted.
He kind of plays like Jimmy a little bit. I've also heard Shane Battier, which I don't really agree with. I think he's
I don't know.
a better on-ball player than Shane Battier.
Battier was also like one of the great defensive players of all time. Like,
right. And look, maybe Jaime has been good on defense. He has a while to get to what Shane Battier was, but I just think his game's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Another one I've heard is Aaron Gordon. I think Locked on Heat.
Aaron Gordon?
Aaron Gordon with the Nuggets. Yeah.
Yeah, not Eric Gordon.
Aaron Gordon. Sorry.
Yeah.
Aaron.
No, you said Aaron, but
okay. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Aaron Gordon, I just think of as like the craziest athlete in the league. So.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, like role wise, like kind of junkyard dog kind of player, right? As an offensive player who can play some defense.
The ones that stick out to me are Gordon Hayward, Jimmy. Again, not as good as this guy. He's a Hall of Famer. But Paul Pierce, a little bit.
Paul Pierce is that was one I was thinking. Some modern guys I was thinking. He's not as much like an on-ball guy, but he's got a little Kyle Anderson to me with like the IQ, the size, the playmaking, the defensive ability. Not like the world's greatest athlete, but just great feel. Of course, Kyle Anderson's like kind of more of like a point guard like than I think Jaime will ever be. Some of his offensive stuff reminds me a little. He's obviously like very different body type. Reminds me a little of Jalen Brunson. Another like 4-year guy coming out of high school, just super polished, crafty, great footwork.
I see that.
I forgot to throw out one other. The ring. I looked at because the Ringer always does kind of goofy NBA draft comps. Do you know what theirs was for Jaime Jaquez? Well, I should get the exact phrasing right because they always do like spicy, like Luka Doncic or whatever.
The other one that while you're getting that, the other one that came to my mind, and I think their games are obviously a little bit different, but Joe Johnson is another one. Just the way they play, like
I kind of like that one.
Joe Johnson,
Slow-mo Joe, right? It's like
play at their own pace, a lot of mid-range shots, just kind of just makes the right play, just kind of efficient and gets to his spots. Like I kind of see that, but Gordon Hayward to me is the best one. And
Gordon Hayward is like, if you think he can be an all-star, that's like you're pretty much envisioning that kind of career, I think.
Okay, right? So what do you? This is very early. We don't want to overreact. But
wait, first, do you want the Ringer draft comp? I got it. Kevin McHale, impressionist. Again, it's the footwork. He's not a post guy. He's not like a post guy like that, though. But he's got the footwork. It's all about the footwork, right?
Not terrible. It's better than the other one.
If he's Kevin McHale, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty good. What do you think his ceiling is? Do you think he can be an all-star level player?
Okay, so we've seen some goofy all-stars in the East. What was the year where like it was like every person who's ever played for the Hawks got to be an all-star? Kyle Korver, right? My guess is probably not. Just because
odds are no.
Is he ever like if is he ever going to be more than the third best player for the Heat, right? Like, it's hard to ever imagine a scenario where, he's going to play, assuming let's just assume he's a Heat player forever. Like, that's how we have to do this exercise. Bam's going to be better than him for his entire career. They got Tyler Herro for a long time. It's like hard to imagine him being a better player than Tyler Herro. So like, my guess is probably not, but can he be like, right now he said, has he been the fourth best player on this team? Like, I don't expect him to be the fourth best player all year long, but to me, his ceiling is like fourth best player on a championship team, basically. Like, I think he can.
It's
he
really
can
good.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah. He's been a lot better. Like when they drafted him, I didn't think he was a bad player, but I'm like, oh, 4-year guy, like he'll be solid. But again, he's been better than I think any of us could have expected. And if you have a player of his caliber coming off the bench, that's a game changer for this team. He comes in and change, and again, you can run offense through him. He defends very well. He's a game changer off the bench for this team.
I think that's the thing that's nice about him is he can be a bench guy, or he can you could just plug him in, and he's like the number 5 option on offense, right? Like,
I mean, he started
pretty good spot to be.
In Atlanta, I think it was Atlanta when he started because Jimmy was out. He had 20-something points. On efficient shooting. Like, that's the thing. It's like
and he can start in a million different spots, right? If Jimmy's out, he can start. If Haywood's out, he could start, right? Like, you could go a little small. If I don't know if he's not a point guard, but if you want to go a little big, he could. And Duncan was out, you could maybe start a game. So like, he fits a lot of different roles. I totally understood the pick when the Heat made it, just like the idea that this guy's going to be ready to help us right now. We've got a really tight window. I think our one, I remember when I think our concern when they took him was like, are the Blazers going to want this guy, or should you have just gone with, was like Cam Whitmore, I think did he fall past the Heat? I can't remember. One of those like really high upside guys. That's why you didn't do that, right? Is like, because if you didn't make that Dame trade and you had to hang on to this guy, you want him to be able to help you out right now. And
the Blazers should have probably wanted him though. Not looking back at it, like he's a good piece.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like it's. I know he's 22, almost 23, right? But like
22, like it's still,
he's on his rookie. That means he's on his rookie contract, like when his prime starts. That's a pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah, no, it's a great. I mean, that's what makes that's how the Warriors got really good. Obviously, you have a bunch of guys that are overperforming on a rookie contract.
Yeah, and the Warriors, it's kind of interesting. Of all the things everyone has tried to copy about the Warriors built that team by drafting Steph Curry, who played for 3 years in college, Draymond Green, who played for 4 years in college, Klay Thompson, I think played for 4 years in college. He definitely played multiple years in college. It's not like he was a one and done. The Heat have been, I think they've done a good job of like mixing it up with like upside shots. A guy like Jovic or, Bam was, like kind of a little project-y, right, when the Heat took him.
Yeah.
Tyler was young, but he was really productive also in his 1 year at Kentucky. And then, they obviously they they're good at team building. That's kind of the takeaway here. And sometimes you don't overthink it and you just take a guy who is going to be good, because there's a risk, of, you mentioned Patrick Williams, like the reason you take him was, he was like fine his 1 year at Florida State, but you took him because what could he be in 4 years? And 4 years later, he's about the same age as Jaime Jaquez and not as good as him.
Yeah. Yeah. And one more thing on Jaime Jaquez that will continue to make him a fan favorite in Miami. So this is a story straight from being on the scene in Chicago. It was halftime. They're playing Suavemente over the speakers, which I'm sure. I don't know if do you know that song, David?
Yeah, obviously.
I mean, that's a classic.
Yeah.
Right?
Classic, yeah.
And Jaime Jaquez, I'm just like watching them warm up, and I see Jaime Jaquez, and he's singing the song. Like, come on.
I know there's not a lot of Mexicans in Miami, but there's definitely a cultural connection there, right?
That was fun. I didn't say anything. I forgot to tell him after the game, but I noticed that and I was just laughing because I'm like, you just don't see that often. Like,
he grew up listening to that at like family parties, just like I'm sure a lot of Miamians did, right?
So if he's an all-star level player, and he knows the song Suavemente. He is going to be maybe the most beloved athlete in software sports.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good place as any to end it. You guys can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chang. What do you got coming this week? Anything? It was Thanksgiving, so like there's not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Quiet
I
week.
mean, it never stops, but today I posted something on Max Struess.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, he called me yesterday and we spoke just about him playing the Heat for the first time, saying how it's going to be weird. It's funny, he said that like it's been different, obviously playing for Cleveland, like the Heat do things so differently. And I'm like, what's the biggest difference? And he's like, with the Heat, like you're always on edge. Like there's no relaxing when you're with the Heat. And like Cleveland is like it's more lax, which is good and bad. Like, but it's something he's noticed, and that's kind of when you play for the Heat, you know that like that's how Spo is. That's how he coaches. You're always on edge. I also have something on Kevin Love. Spoke with him a few days ago about going to Cleveland for the first time since leaving and going to the Heat, and now he's not playing. He's out for personal reasons, so I had to scramble and change a couple of those graphs in that story. But he's out for personal reasons for that game, so he won't be making his return to Cleveland on Wednesday.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter at dbwilson2. I don't know, not a whole lot going on. Thanksgiving, disappointing Canes season coming to an end. Good Dolphin season at least, I guess. Watch Hard Knocks, listen to the Dolphins in Depth podcast. I'm sure they're going to talk about it this week. So thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.